Well, we're on final approach for the brisket. As you know, if you saw our other video, we took it out of the oven after it was done cooking. It's shrunk enormously, if you've noticed. I did take a little taste off the end to make sure it was okay. And I have to admit, even after 4 hours in the oven, like we showed you in the other video, it still wasn't tender enough. So I put it in for about 2 more hours. So this has had a total of about 6 hours in the oven, and it was cooking with all that wonderful liquid and garlic and onions and some carrots and stuff. And you should take a look at the other video on that if you haven't seen it. But now we're on final approach. We're ready to get it ready for service. And this part only takes about an hour, and mostly it's unattended cooking. So the first thing I want to do, you probably remember, I pulled off both the sauce, the gravy, the juices from the brisket, and all the cooking vegetables. I'm going to take some of the cooking vegetables and put down a bed for the brisket to reheat on, because we're going to slice it and reheat it. So let's move this. And I'm going to take about half of the vegetables that I've previously removed. And they're fully cooked and lovely and all, oh, that's great. It's probably, well, a little more. Because we want some chunkiness. Okay? So we'll spread that out in the pan. Now we slice. You can use any kind of knife you like for it. If you see right here, this is obviously fat. But this part here, the stuff between what appears to be meat, that's not really fatty marbling. That's the collagen we were talking about. And that's the stuff that breaks down and makes this wonderfully moist and tender and juicy when it's cooked. But now that it's cold and we've pulled off all the parts and separated them, it's very, very easy to slice. So you can just slice it into reasonably thin slices with any kind of knife you want. Now remember, we were talking about the point end. That's the end I'm cutting from now. And you can see that the grain runs in a couple of different directions. That's perfectly fine. It's going to help it hold together as it reheats. Now this piece right here, I don't know if you can see. You can see there's quite a bit of fat right here. That you can pull off when it goes on the plate or on the serving platter. I'm leaving it in right now to give it more flavor. If you have an electric knife, you can use that to make perfectly wonderful thin slices as well. So now all we have to do is lay these lovely slices out and scatter them about, lay them out nicely on the veg. And you can see as we get towards the flat cut end that I told you about before, this slice isn't really all that well marbled. It's very, very lean, and you could break it into shreds right now. That's why I like the point cut end a little better. However, your preference may vary. So it's laid out very nicely over the veg. This is going to go, we're going to cover this and put it in a 300-degree oven for about an hour. We are going to add the juices and gravy to it in just a minute, but I'm going to put it in the oven now to give a little head start. So now we have 2 other elements to combine to make the gravy, sauce, juice, whatever you want to call it. First, we have just the juices we poured off last time. And as you can see, there is a very nice layer of fat on top that is congealed, and you can just pick it up, and it all comes off in one piece like a giant fat puck. And this can be saved or thrown away. I'm going to save it because you never know what you might need it for. We could saute veg in it later. The rest, this beautiful defatted juice, we're going to put into a saucepan, or a big skillet actually, and reduce it down and get a sense of how it tastes, whether it needs more salt, pepper, other seasonings, if it's too thin, too watery, or if it's too thick. So while that sauce is reducing, I'm going to take the remainder of these vegetables and put them into the Cuisinart and bash them down to a very, very smooth sauce. We're going to use these to thicken the gravy. We're not going to use flour or any other kind of starch. One, because I have a lot of gluten-free friends, and I also have diabetic friends who don't need all that extra starch. These veg will do a perfect job of thickening up the sauce without any added starch. There's plenty of sugar already in carrots and onions, so it's a little iffy even there. But this way, no gluten, no starch, no flour. Okay, That's pretty smooth right now. If you needed it totally smooth, after this is all done mixing with the existing juices and it's a complete well-flavored gravy, you could strain it if you wanted it totally smooth, totally fine. I don't really care about it that much. I think it's sort of cool when it's a little rustic and a little chunky or has some texture to it, so I'm not going to bother doing that, but you certainly could. We're going to go put this into the boiling juices on the stove right now. So we're just going to pour this in. I'm just going to stir this in and let it come to a nice simmer. All right, it's boiling nicely now. It's come up to temperature, so I'm going to give it a taste to see where it is at this point. Because after we put it over the brisket, we're not going to have a chance to adjust the seasoning. It's not bad, but it needs salt and pepper. So we're going to give it a large pinch or two of my seasoned salt blend, some seasoned pepper, and a little bit of my all-purpose blend. The recipes for all of these are on the websites. Give it another taste. Much better. It's got a nice pepper kick to it. Could probably use a little more salt, but as this is going to cook down a little bit, we're not going to put any more salt in right now. We don't want to oversalt it. We're going to stir fairly frequently so it doesn't stick, because even though there's no flour or other starch in it, there's plenty of sugar in the vegetables and they will stick if you don't keep them moving. So you can see it's reduced down quite a bit. It's thick and gravy-like. We've adjusted the seasoning. It's practically perfect. So now we're going to put it over the brisket and let it reheat with the juices for the remainder of its time. And back into the oven for about an hour. Well, it's been about an hour and a half on the brisket in the oven, so we're going to take him out now and see how he looks. Wow, pretty good. You'll notice I have 3 roasting pans here, so there's no chance of it buckling and ending up with hot gravy all over my feet or on the floor. It's completely heated through, unbelievably tender. And let's put it on a platter so it looks a little nicer. You can see that you've got the nice thick onion, garlic, carrot gravy all around it. Just layer up some nice pieces. Oh, wish you could smell this. Garlicky, oniony, a little bit of tomato from the V8 we put in. Oh, this is so tender. It's almost falling apart. You could have left it in longer and it actually would fall apart. And if that's what you like, that's fine. The good news is, even if your guests aren't ready or they're not here yet and this is ready before they are, this can sit in a warming oven at 140, 150 degrees for hours and hours and hours, and it'll just get better and better and better. So no worries. So there you have it. A perfect holiday brisket.